procedure for this meeting is as follows. The CAO will present a brief PowerPoint presentation on the notice of intent, and this presentation is the same one that was given at 4 p.m. this afternoon. The public will be then provided with an opportunity to provide their comments and or ask questions. Each member of the public will have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Clearly state your name and address prior to commencing so that the clerk can enter it into the public minutes. The public is advised that any comments expressed and any written material provided will become part of the public record. Are there any questions as to this order of procedure? Prior to today, we received 28 submissions through the city website, and earlier today we had 26 presentations provided to council. At this time, I'll turn it over to City Clerk Joan Thompson to outline some of the items.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have 2 floor mics in the aisles here, and when we get to hearing the comments and the questions from the public, would ask that you go to the mic, clearly state your name and address so that we can record it in the minutes and that everyone is aware of who is speaking. We ask a time limit of up to 3 minutes so that everyone has an opportunity to speak this evening. And if you are unable to queue up at the standing mics, we do have some other microphones available, and we will bring one to you. Just indicate that you would like to speak and that you need the microphone. And back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. I'll turn it over now to Rob Horner, Chief Administrative Officer, to walk through the PowerPoint.
Great, thanks very much. Can everyone hear me at the back? Great, thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, members of the Council, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to provide you a brief overview presentation, quite similar in format to what we did last September, to give you a sense of what the process is and what is being considered. Just to set your minds at ease, all this information will be posted on the city's website tomorrow morning. I know it's text heavy. We'd like to provide enough factual information for you so you don't have to go hunting for various pieces. Just to start, in October of 2016, Council passed a resolution for city staff to meet with the Stratford Festival to obtain a full understanding of their redevelopment proposal relative to the Tom Patterson site, which is municipally known as 48 Water Street. In September of 2017, Council passed a resolution to initiate a public consultation process. That process went from September 21st to October the 10th, and many of you may have been here on September the 26th when we held 2 identical sessions to talk about the proposal at that point. On November 30th, we culminated that process with a comprehensive report that can be found on the city's webpage. On December the 11th, so just last month, Stratford City Council passed 2 resolutions. One was direction for staff to initiate a notice of intent to consider the disposition of the land, the city-owned land at 48 Water Street, and further that the meeting be held on January the 15th, 2018, which is today, of course, and to provide notice of that meeting. So the property specifically, again, currently leased in part to the festival and used by many organizations. I don't have enough room to include them all here, but I am acknowledging the Stratford Lakeside Active Adults, Rotary, Lawn Bowling Club, and Kiwanis, just to name a few. And this is a map as well. This is on the city website, just showing you a little bit more specifically the property that's being considered. So if we're talking about some key public interests and community interests, I just wanted to identify a few of them for you to perhaps help refine your understanding of the meeting tonight and what is under consideration. So first, and just back to the previous slide, is the current users. Many community groups and individuals who use the site. Secondly are the economic and cultural contributions of the Stratford Festival to the community. The significant senior government funding from both the province and the federal government that would support the proposed redevelopment. The community building that comes with design excellence and building a world-class facility. Publicly accessible green space, the need for ongoing public parking, the fact that the current facility is aging, And finally, that the opportunity does exist to build a community hub. That has been spoken of most frequently in terms of the Grand Trunk Community Hub on the city-owned lands, the former Cooper site, and which could involve a partnership with the University of Waterloo, with the YMCA, and could include a seniors facility, among other things. So I will not go through this, I promise, but as I say, you can have a look on the website as well. This is an itemization of public notice relative to this meeting this evening, which included a reminder on Saturday in the Beacon Herald, and then a reminder on social media this morning. Providing feedback, so we opened public feedback on December the 27th, and as Mayor Matheson noted, we received up until today a total of 28 submissions and then 26 presentations this afternoon. We tried to provide every means of public input to make it convenient and comfortable for the community. You could choose the means of submission. We do have comment cards, so as you came in, there are 2 tables with pens and paper. Welcome to fill those out as well, and of course, the website and the email coordinates are noted here again. So this is a really important message. So this is the final planned public meeting for Council to listen to you. Council will not be debating or deliberating. And as with the first session this afternoon, all of the focus was on listening to people as they provided their delegation. How to receive your input. So as advertised, a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. If you think you can do a fantastic job in a minute and a half, we would embrace that as well. But we will provide you up to 3 minutes. We'll come to you with microphones, as the clerk said, if you're unable to. Otherwise, we do have 2 microphones if you'd like to queue up to them. We need your name and address before you speak. Please be respectful, listen to others. If your point's been already made, perhaps you can simply indicate your support for that point. And finally, and I think I mentioned this at the September 26th meeting as well, a written comment has the same value and weight as a verbal comment, so whatever you're most comfortable with, please choose accordingly. And city staff are taking notes. So in terms of next steps, and as I said, this is the last planned public consultation opportunity. Following this, Stratford City Council will review all of the feedback from the consultation, and they will make a decision as to whether the property will be deemed surplus. That would happen through a special meeting, and they would determine the appropriate method of disposal, and then if declared surplus, a special meeting of council would be held to make a decision on the actual disposition of the property. So as I said, no decision being made tonight, the final planned input, but we are looking at an expected council decision at the end of this month or the beginning of February of this year. And Your Worship, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. So I'd ask members of the public who'd like to address and ask questions to please go to the microphones on either side. Clearly state your name and address for the record. And we look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Bob Zerchansky is my name, and I live at 160 Romeo Street South. Excuse me for commenting perhaps harshly, but that was really not very good in terms of what we want to hear today. I mean, I would like to hear, for example, why it doesn't seem like there's a consideration that the land is rented. Any of the other properties that the festival operates on in the city, are they owned or are they rented? The land, rather, is it owned or rented? I mean, I would have liked to have heard that. When I come to a meeting and I don't hear a full, open explanation of what we are really looking at, then I have to say to myself, well, why isn't the complete story being told? And, for your reference, I mean, why don't you do this in future? It certainly would make people feel more at ease, that they can have confidence in you. But when you don't give full stories,
If I
Sorry.
could, sir, I'll read again. The purpose of this public meeting is to give the public an opportunity to hear all interested persons with respect to notice of intent to consider declaring a surplus and to dispose of 48 Water Street. That's what we're here for. Whether the theater owns the land downtown or got land in 1953, that's not what we're here about. We're here to talk about 48 Water Street.
Well, you haven't explained whether there is an option for renting the land.
Whether we lease on a long-term lease or sell, it's disposal of public land.
Well, that could have been clarified too.
Okay, would you like to ask your other comments?
I'm sure there are others, so I may come back.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, it's Bob Verdun, and my spouse and I are privileged to live in this city. And between the houses, we have a view of the Tom Patterson site, which of course is mostly a parking lot today. And we're looking forward to seeing something very impressive rise on that site. Excuse me. I know there's not a lot to be said. Most people have already said it. But I had an interesting thought about the fact that the senior citizens are probably the ones who are most being disrupted by this. And while I'm in that category and support this project, I sympathize with them, but I think the City Council will do a good job of accommodating them. And the festival has sufficient financing to make sure that it doesn't cost the taxpayers to make this happen. But here's the thought. In July of this year, the Stratford Festival will become a senior citizen. It will be 65 years old. And it's a very important senior citizen. Think about what this city would look like if Tom Patterson had not succeeded in creating this theatrical miracle that has turned Stratford into a national gem. And I was just in one of our stores this afternoon, and I had time to chat with the clerks. And they said flat out, their store would not exist if we didn't have the festival. The local trade is good, but it's not enough to satisfy the needs of a business staying around. And that's true for so many of the businesses here. We have a vibrant downtown. We don't have to worry about a rotting downtown as so many cities do, because we have the festival. And there's just so many things. That's just the obvious. The restaurants, of course. We're just blessed by this. But it's not a sure thing. And when we have an opportunity like this, there's just no way that we would turn it down. And it also spurs the opportunity to do something really creative with the Grand Trunk site. I hope to live long enough to see it fully in public use so we can celebrate something that was Stratford's economic driver prior to the festival. And it can become a driver again and take us to another level. So in terms of what's before us tonight is, does the City Council have sufficient grounds to declare this a surplus to the city's needs? The answer is obvious, because we can do even better for the service clubs and the senior citizens that are currently accommodated. Because I watched the activity there, and we could do much better than what is there, and do something that's really game-changing for the city and move us forward into something that fills that rather ugly void that we have on the Cooper site. So I commend the City Council to move ahead with this. We support you. Certainly some things could have been done differently along the way, but we're here now. The festival has the money. Let's put it to work.
Mr. Verdun, can we just have your address on William Street?
212.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pierre Gatois, 278 Mornington Street in Stratford. I'd like to start by saying that my wife and I fell in love with Stratford about 20 years ago, and we were fortunate enough to move here 5 years ago now and start a business. We are now running a busy bed and breakfast in town, and we really enjoy living here. Also, I have the honor of being president of SABA, which is the Stratford Association of Bed and Breakfast. And I would like to say that as SABA president and as SABA in general, we are totally in favor of the Tom Patterson project, since the 60 businesses that comprise SABA are very tightly knitted in with the festival as far as the business is concerned. We were also this morning at the kickoff for the fundraiser for the Stratford Festival. We were very happy to see that of the goal of $100 million that was announced this morning, the festival already has $70 million promised or in place for this project. However, and I'm not speaking for the festival, as a business person, if I were to invest $70 to $100 million into a venture, I would certainly prefer to have owned land rather than leased land. And I think that might be a consideration for council when they make their decision. In closing, I would like, on behalf of SABA and myself, to thank Mayor Matheson, council, and staff for the wonderful work that's been done so far on this project. Thank you.
This is just a question more than a comment. I'm Steve Landers, 69 Downey Street.
Yes.
My question is, what you're calling 48 water, does that include the Optimist Hall there as well?
No, that is a separate transaction the theater is undertaking themselves with the Optimist Club.
Okay, so what about that parking lot behind the Optimist building? Is that part of the Optimist Club, or is that?
Anything on the raised piece of land that is immediately adjacent to the Optimist Club is their property.
But they're going to acquire that, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I believe that's their intent.
Thank you.
I'm Lauren Bozen, 45 DeMille Street, and I'm a senior citizen. And I've seen the plans, I've seen what they have to offer, and I'm really impressed with somebody from the United States would take $20 million out of their funds and bring it to Stratford. Now there's confidence in our city, right? One of the things I'd like to say is I would not want to tell my grandchildren that we had a major proposal here slip through our fingers like we did the Cooper site 30 years ago. I thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Anyone else? Anyone further? Any other member of the public wishing to offer comment or ask question?
Again, Dorothy Van Esbrook, 202 Caledonia Street. My question is, I was at the meetings where this was voted on, and I was at the meetings where the council voted for the tender and the approval of the tender for the Agriplex. Have you as councillors seen the diagram of the Kiwanis Centre and all the rooms and what activity happens in each room, and then the same for the renovations at the Agriplex, and if not, when will that be available to the public?
Mr. Horn.
So to your first question, so I would certainly acknowledge and defer to councillors to respond, but I know each and every one of them knows the KCC quite well. In terms of the Agriplex renovations, and we've had a good chat as well, Dorothy, about this. So we have an arrangement where we're able to accommodate everyone. We're working on some refinements to that to make sure we optimize for everyone. But the key point, I think, is the improvements that are being made at the Agriplex are being paid for by the festival, and they don't have to be undone. So as people move in and out of the Agriplex, they're actually bona fide improvements to the building, and that is not being incurred by the taxpayer. So at this point, we're actually moving equipment out of the building, starting the work in earnest, but there are still some refinements to the drawings and specs that are happening, and also some additional discussions to see exactly where people want to be. So that's the minutiae. The bigger picture is we have dedicated space for woodworking, for lapidary, for billiards, for general meeting area, right down to the jigsaw puzzles. And so we're very sensitive to the needs, and we want to do a full transfer of all of those.
Dorothy, I would say when the tender document came before council, I'm certain there was diagrams with it.
I saw the tender documents. I didn't see any diagrams.
There would be background information available to members of council, and I'd leave it to them whether or not they saw it. To be quite honest, if I actually know where the jigsaw puzzles are kept at the KCC, I'm probably not doing the job as the mayor. And what we've done in the actual instance, we've given the community service director, the manager of recreation services, the responsibility to accommodate. Both Mr. St. Louis and Mr. Herndon deal with the Stratford Lakeside Active Adults Association on a daily basis, and they have been involved, as well as Steve Krupp, who's the president, Sam Moore, and a committee that they put together to work on the design of the new building and the new space.
Can I one more comment? I have not seen any drawing, and I don't think councillors have seen the drawings. My only other comment is, are you over 55? Maybe are you over 45? Okay. Even if you're not a SLAW member, so this is for all the B&B owners or anybody else in the audience, you are welcome to come to any activity at the Kiwanis for the next couple months without joining. You will. I know there's some euchre players out there, and please spend your $50 and come and get to know us, and we will try our best to try and get to know you as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Dave Collier, 186 Delamere. Further to, actually, I was here this afternoon as well, and I just wanted to point out that I'm a little bit under the SLAW age, just a little. I'll be there soon. And I'm really looking forward to some of those activities. But I've had some serious conversations with my 27 and 23-year-old sons about this. And there's not a lot of representation from under 40 here. And I want to make sure that everyone realizes that what we are building here, both with the theater and with the community hub, is about them. It's about the future. It really is a legacy that will see us through 50, 75 years. And I hope the council sort of keeps that in front of mind when they make these decisions.
Thank you.
If I may be permitted a supplementary, Mr. Chairman.
Of course.
I think it's important to have some perspective here. I've been around theater all my life, and I've helped to start some theaters, and so I have a unique perspective. And I volunteered back in 1984 to help the festival become a better business. And I poked around in all the corners of the business side of the festival and made a few enemies because they said you shouldn't be doing things this way. But the long and short of it is, in 1984, there was a risk that the festival might not survive. It didn't have the economic base that it has today, and yet theater is much more competitive today than it was then. But today, the festival already has enough money pledged to pay for the theater. There isn't any question about it that they've got the money to build it, and they're going to raise more money to add to their endowment funds so they can continue to support it during rough periods. Now, this is amazing. When you think about the scale of the project, they're not asking for a dime from the city. And not only that, they're paying for the additional facilities at the Agriplex. So this is an amazing improvement in the festival, and we as a city need to do everything we can without burdening the taxpayers to ensure that that strong base not only remains strong, but gets even better, because it is such a driver of the economics of the city, never mind the wonderful benefits that we get because of the restaurants and the stores and just the cultural aspects of it. So, onward.
Thank you. Any other member of the public at this time?
Becky Douglas, 96 Long Drive. I just have one question. If council decides not to go ahead with this project, what happens to that building? And how much is it going to cost to keep it in shape?
That is something Mr. Horn and the staff would put together a report on to improve or fix the building to its state condition.
It would still be a responsibility of the city.
Yes, correct.
And it would cost money, because I understand it is not in good shape.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Any other member of the public?
Ann Campion, I live on Hibernia Street. I prefer not to give the exact address, but I'll do that privately if you need that later. If you're looking to hear from us again, you have heard from me before, but if it's important to have as many voices as possible at the table, then may I add my voice of affirmation as a person who is over 55, so I'm in that population. I hope I get to retire and live a long life here, but I feel every day is graced. So yes, I want to benefit in the future. I believe that making a decision to move forward will benefit all of the citizens of our community. I also recognize that change is very hard for all of us. I have lived through that as a business owner with the business that faces Market Square, and the ongoing challenges that still will, evolve, and that's hard, and change is hard. But I think the benefit will outweigh the anxiety that we're feeling right now. And I would just encourage you to move forward, because I was also at that meeting this morning, and it struck me that there's $70 million that are already there, and the city knows, and everyone knows that the Tom Patterson, as it currently exists, that building needs great repair, and it belongs to you, and somebody else will make another beautiful addition to our community. And as a business owner, I would say that long term, and I hope I have a good succession plan for someone else to own my business and someone after that it will benefit from all of the members of our community taking part and all of the ongoing visitors that will come. And we will feel it this season with one of the theaters closed. So the sooner the process gets forward so that building can be built and opened again, and we can learn more from the arts that teach us all the time how to live, that would be great.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Gossens, 164 King Street. I thought the purpose of the meeting was to decide leasing versus selling the land. Maybe I'm mistaken in that. But I wonder if somebody could kind of give pros, cons, one versus the other, as I have no knowledge of how that works.
Thank you, and it's a great question. And as I attempted to do in the presentation, it is really a two-step process. The first one being council has to decide whether the property is indeed surplus, and then it needs to consider how it might dispose of the property. So you're absolutely right on. In terms of purchase versus lease, that would be a subsequent decision of council. I can tell you this. A long-term lease is really nearly the same as an outright purchase. That's number one. And number two, We've started a discussion as well, and I think the festival clearly understands that public access and use of the property should not ride with the decision to sell or to lease. In other words, there should be ongoing, and we've all talked about, for example, parking. We've talked about the open space system. Two really good examples of ongoing public interest. And so I would just caution you not to assume that an outright purchase would be an outright denial of public access. But anyway, it's really a two-step process, and to your point, the focus tonight is really on whether council will proceed to deem the property surplus and then make a decision on disposition.
And just to further that, Ms. Ossens, we have consulted with regards to what fair market value would be. We have employed, so we have some background knowledge of that, so that when we make that decision, there will be some guiding principle for council.
Just another question. I understood it, and maybe I was wrong in that, but I remember hearing at some point that the city couldn't sell parkland because a land that was deemed parkland. Was that a misunderstanding on my part, or?
So my short answer is that is a misunderstanding, and the city is entitled to consider disposition.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ray Harsan, 301 Water Street. First off, thanks for the opportunity to provide input. I think it's a very valuable step. And some of my questions actually were touched on by the last person here who spoke regarding clarification of process and the focus on a full explanation really of the decision to declare the land surplus or not. Can you outline some of the criteria against which you make that decision?
So Ray, I'm going to give you my short answer, which is the draft staff report we posted last November to council. If you look at that plus the appendices, I think it touches on the social, environmental, and economic. And I always go back to those parameters. So I think those would be the major criteria. That said, there's also the business side of the equation as well. If council decides to proceed, my advice would certainly be fair market value or greater. And then of course lots of discussion around what does it mean to purchase or to lease, and where does the public access and use fit into that.
So for the sake of clarity, for communication amongst the group here, that you're looking at business criteria, social criteria, and economic criteria.
I would say economic, social, and environmental.
Environmental?
Yes.
Okay. With respect to the next step in the process, determining fair market value and with respect to leasing or selling, what consideration has been given to a suggestion that was made this afternoon in your initial research as to sell part of the land so that there's an immediate cash inflow that the city can use or dedicate to a specific purpose, such as the Cooper Block and the Grand Trunk Community Hub, and also leasing the rest of the land so that there's ongoing cash flow. Can you expand on your understanding of what has been done so far to look at those 2 or 3 options? One, an outright lease, outright purchase, and then a combination of the 2.
I would say we've had experts look at all of them. And at what time council moves forward, the appraisal would become a public document. But we probably don't negotiate with our appraisal in public right now.
Right, okay. But is it possible then to, so what I understand from that comment, it is possible to have a 2-pronged approach to purchase part and to lease part?
I'm looking back at the city solicitor, Ms. Lombardi, and that is always an option, correct? Paul, if you can just wait, they're going to bring you a microphone.
Hi. In law and pure law, that's a complicated proposal to sell a portion of a property from a larger property due to zoning considerations. There has been much discussion about how to encumber the property through agreements and those sorts of things to ensure public access and parking, and those discussions are ongoing. So we sorry, just to clarify, so we can encumber the property? So if we talk about it that way, just a little different language than what what people are suggesting as in sell versus lease. It would be sell and encumber in perpetuity.
Okay, thank you. The intent here being whatever avenue we choose is for the city's best interest. Fully supportive of the festival's plans here and don't second guess them at this point. Too much water's gone under the bridge and too much time. So glad to see there's a deadline of the end of January, middle of February for decision on the item here. My third item deals with parking. I appreciate the ratio is 4-to-1, so for every four bums in the seat, there has to be one spot. Looking at the number of cars that currently park on Water Street and Coburn Street in the immediate area, plus make use of the Allman Theatre parking, is it possible to consider increasing that ratio, if not 2-to-1, then at least 3-to-1?
I would say that the consideration is currently there's 130 parking spots on that site, and we are actively looking at adding anywhere from 30 to 50 additional spaces. And then keeping them, of course, available for public uses, especially through the winter, and then in the summer not having both lots sealed off for the theater, but allowing some of them to be available for public.
So in the summer, the hope is that there would be an additional 50?
Yeah. There's 130 spots in the lot now. It's our hope that we could end up with between 170 and 180 spots in the end.
Great, thank you.
Anyone further? Any other member of the public?
Murray Scott, 45 Buckingham Drive, and I got a picture here of Tom Patterson. No notes for a speech. I didn't plan on speaking, but I just, I saw him before he died, and well, he's just a man, but what he did for Stratford was exceptional. So I'm all in favor of honoring him. Forget all the rest of it, the money, the business, everything else. But this decision is big because I've always wondered if Stratford is really an artistic place or whether it's just faking it. And we'll see.
Any other member of the public? Is there any other member of the public wishing to address council at this time?
Good evening, Kyle McGraw, 88 Matilda Street of Stratford. I know council has my written submissions. I'll be very brief. I just didn't want this meeting to be all positive, so there has to be at least one naysayer in the room. So I just wanted to suggest to council that my submissions be taken very seriously and it be considered also in the context of asset management for the city. Going forward, I think the Tom Patterson project is going to be very beneficial to the city. It's going to be a great project that's going to bring an influx of visitors, and it's going to be an economic boom, which nobody can deny. However, it's going to mess up my view from my office window selfishly, and it's going to create a parking and traffic nightmare at 5 p.m. when I'm trying to get home, again selfishly. But aside from that, and more specifically to the discussion, I think the city really needs to consider what is surplus and what surplus means to the city. There are presently groups that occupy that space. There are probably potential groups and uses that could use the space, and this is all predicated on moving these individuals around from place to place, eventually hoping for a home for them at this wonderful hub that's been proposed. But the hub is also tentative. So I think that for peace of mind for a lot of the seniors in these groups that are being displaced, one, they'd like to find a secure, stable home where they're not jumping around all the time. They found that in the Kiwanis Center and that property. The space is currently being used. Whether or not the city decides to continue to use the Kiwanis Center and that building, make capital improvements, that's entirely up to them. But I think the outright sale of the land and deeming and declaring it surplus, I think that's a very drastic step. And I don't deny that the Tom Patterson project should go ahead, but I think council needs to give very serious consideration to the outright sale of the land. And in contrast, if this Tom Patterson project decides that they don't want to proceed because they're not being offered the sale of the land, even though they've been long-term tenants for as long as they've been, I think that should give council pause if they are willing to enter into amicable negotiations with the city on a long-term lease agreement. So, in short, I think serious consideration needs to be given to the term surplus and whether that land is actually surplus to the needs of the city and the citizens of Stratford.
Thanks very much, Kyle. We have referred your letter to our solicitor with regards to the matters. Anyone else would like to address council at this time? Anyone further? I'll call a third and final time. Is there anyone else wishing to address council at this time? All right. Comments received will be included in the public meeting minutes and provided to City Council and the public. They'll be available online tomorrow. A special council meeting has been scheduled for January 17th at 6 p.m. for council to consider all the feedback that we received through the 28 submissions online, the 26 submissions this afternoon, and the 13 this evening. Details will be posted on the City of Stratford's website. Please check the meeting schedule for more details, and we'll as well put them on social media. And I will at this time declare the public meeting closed, and we'll go back into council to just close off this evening if I could. At this time, it's item 4. It's the reading of the bylaws, and it's the confirmatory bylaw to confirm this evening and this afternoon's meetings. And I need a mover and a seconder for first and second reading. Councillor Ritzma and Councillor McManus are moving first and second reading. Any discussion? If not, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Third and final reading for the bylaw, Councillor Vasilakos and Councillor Bunting. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. And to adjourn this evening's meeting, Councillor Clifford and Councillor Mark. I can always count on those two. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? This meeting is adjourned, and I thank everyone for coming out this evening. It was a very respectful dialogue, as it was this afternoon, and we look forward to moving forward with your review of your comments and rendering a decision in the coming weeks. Thank you.